Welcome to Bournville, best known as the home of the famous Cadbury chocolate. But there is more to Bournville than meets the eye. Bournville was the brainchild of George Cadbury, the son of the creator of Cadbury chocolate. George, along with his brother, relocated the factory to Bournville village from its original home in central Birmingham. He did this not only with the intention to create a better environment for the workers of the factory, but to relieve the social and housing problem in the central part of the city. We went out to Bournville as a group to explore the cultural and social meaning of the village, in particular, focusing on the Quaker values and the role they played in the construction and the moral values of the village and the people within it.
The village is giving it a great community spirit. People always stop and talk to you, or say good morning, good evening, or whatever it is at the time of the day. They're very localised, but most of the Quaker people within the village area and elsewhere have got a love for humanity. It seems to me. I'm not a Quaker myself, but I love the environment of living in this Quaker area. As you can see from the surrounding area now, it's a beautiful place to live.
George Cadbury, a significant member of the Quaker community, originally devised Bournville's principles. He planned the village around the values and practices of the Quaker community. Many years later today, the community of Bournville still upholds many of these values in their daily way of life. For example, not consuming alcohol, a moral which is strongly enforced to this day by the police and citizens of Bournville.
Off record, I think basically Colonel George Cadbury was a Quaker and therefore he built Bournville on the basis of fairness to society, to all people, because he came here because he saw so much poverty and housing deprivation within the city centre where their original shop was.
Oh, wow.
So they moved out here and built the factory in 1879.
Many of the citizens may not even know why this unspoken law was enforced. It's simply their way of life. People that join the community are expected to accept these when they join. This could be seen as a type of discourse, a community discourse with a shared goal or purpose, which is reached through the means of communication. The system is running through the village without anyone really being aware.
Of course, that will happen in all societies, not only in Quaker societies. I must reiterate what I've just said, and to my experience, there's other outside values that are within the Bournville village area, which is only good. It's only for the better of everybody, because you can see the other side of the coin there. Yeah.
The Cadbury village is considered as an example of good town planning. It contrasted the harsh industrial Victorian lifestyle, and instead workers enjoyed a pleasant home complete with a series of tight restrictions to prevent the environment from being spoiled. The values and practices of the Bournville community, however, can also be seen as a tool of power and control, which constricts the members of the discourse.
Now, George Cadbury was a very far-sighted man in his time, years ahead of the time that he was operating in, and he's built this wonderful environment for the workers and the people of Bournville. To such an extent, it's one of the leading tenants associations in the whole of the UK now. Yeah. And everybody seems happy.
But apart from that, one thing that stands out is the manner in which the village is planned. Right from the roads, to the buildings, to recreational parks. Everything seems to be situated appropriately to suit village life. There are even houses for disabled people and different schemes for people from different financial backgrounds. The Carillon, for example, was built right in the middle of the village and served as a gathering point and also as a signal station for the workers to go to work.
At one time, families of the workers used to be able to pass the tenancy down. Whether that still happens or not, I don't think it does anymore. But there's still a lot of Cadbury workers living Bournville Cadbury houses or Bournville Village Trust houses, which is an offshoot of George Cadbury's well-being and charity efforts. And all the housing was made in the initial places for the workers of Cadbury's. So they got somewhere to live in the country, and every house has got a long, wide garden, so that they can either grow their own vegetables or flowers or have their own space.
But generally speaking, over the years, certainly over the last 100 years, the housing has changed and improved. You know, and it's constantly changing and improving. The city councils are constantly kind of doing work, you know, and improving the road system, improving the housing systems throughout.
Planned cities seem to all have a link. They seem to be a solution to a conflict. In his publication, Strife, Urban Planning and Agonism, John Plauger discusses the essentiality of strife and the role conflict plays in planning cities. He notes, conflict is imminent to planning, and the solution to such a conflict is what normally results in an urban planned settlement. In this scenario, George Cadbury tries to resolve a housing issue arising in Birmingham due to an increase in the population, and also tries to provide jobs for the locals by building a factory. Dale Brosby, a resident of the village, gives his insight on this.
From the outset, it was part workers and part from outside. It wasn't specifically created for the workers. Although the first people that had houses here along Bournville Lane were the managers of the Bournville Works. But majority of workers in the first instance actually came out from the city and went back into the city. And then when the estate was being produced, then only part of the people that actually lived in those houses were from the factory itself. Other people came in from outside as George Cadbury actually sold off the leases of the properties.
But beyond this, we tried to dig deeper as a group and to shed some light on what we had just been told. Was he, George Cadbury, that free to do as he pleased? What sort of mandate did he have to be able to build his own village on the outskirts of the main town? Why wasn't the government included in the initial plan? Why didn't the government try to ease the problem themselves? Another example of a city that was built as a solution to a conflict is Milton Keynes. Milton Keynes was built also to relieve housing congestion in the London borough and was known popularly as the new city by many councils at the time. And this brings us to Foucault's theory of discourse analysis. Michel discusses this as the power expressed through language, and this presents us with an opportunity to understand this village even more. The language being used by George Cadbury as he planned this village is not a vocal one, but a bold statement to usurp authority. Even though the 1890s presented a more democratic rule of law, George Cadbury sent out a message of intent that he was not afraid to bring his values to the fore, hereby planning a settlement based on Quaker norms and distancing himself from Anglicism and Catholicism. As we have meandered through this film, there is a lot more to Bournville than meets the eye. With a past filled with innovation and forward thinking, it is clear to see how the village became such a success. Presently, the community appears as though the residents are desperately trying to hold on to the values instilled by Cadbury more than 100 years ago. And this is becoming increasingly difficult to maintain in the current social time.
Do you think there'll be any threat to Bournville from all of this? I think there is potentially a threat. I was talking to Carl Chin this morning, and his view of the matter is that there is a threat, not in the medium to, not in the short term, but in the medium to long term. Say 5 or 6 years down the line, if Kraft decide chocolate no longer fits their portfolio, if you like, really, then and they could produce it elsewhere. Within their global empire, then the potential is there for the production to be taken away from Bournville, and therefore jobs to go, and potentially the factory to close.
Right. I mean, in the short term, we've heard a lot of people complaining about some of the products that Kraft put out. I mean, do you think this will make any difference to the consumer side of things for Cadbury products?
I think there's a huge wave of sentiment out there amongst consumers, and I think what you'll find is that it will remain very much the case that the consumers will continue to buy Cadbury products, and Kraft sales may well suffer as a result of what's happened overnight.
Thanks for that, John.
No one knows what the future holds for the village. But could the controlled environment and lifestyle of Bournville be deterring residents rather than attracting them? We'll leave that for another day.